Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to the Smarten Up Show, Biblical Education Principles, right here on Lamb Video Network and on YouTube and on Facebook. And what else do we use? Smoke signals, passenger pigeon, all kinds of other ways to communicate. It's great to be with you, the first show of the new year. And this is
Happy New Year.
Yes, and this is episode number 24. So yes. 24. It's a 2-4. There we go.
It's the 24th show,
Yep.
and we have committed this year to provide with you content that is either going to help within the family or help you understand the environment, the society, and the community that you're in, and just to help you educate and parent and navigate through today's just life.
Yeah. And last couple of weeks, we had a lot of fun discussing the different temperaments and then 5 love languages. But tonight, we have a very, very exciting guest to share with you. Our guest is actually hosting an event that we're going to be part of next week, talking all about education and just kind of highlighting some of the stuff that's going on in the public schools right now. And so we would like to introduce to you Christina Fernandes. Welcome, Christina.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on. This is very exciting.
Yes, it is. So we have an event that is coming at us like a train, and I'm sure you must feel like that right now in the organization of it. So tell us, well, first of all, kind of give us a little bit about your background, and then let's get into a little bit about the event that we're going to be doing next week.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know how far you want me to go back, but I guess my background in terms of this event specifically and getting involved in the schools and figuring out, navigating the publicly funded school systems, and realizing that it's not what I want for my family and so many don't want for their family. It started with a little bit, it started long ago. I saw the systems being broken. I'm in healthcare, so I saw the systems, the sick care system. It was something that I've been very passionate about and thinking that's where a lot of my purpose was going to go towards positive change. I ended up, once I had kids and they went into the publicly funded school systems, I had some issues with the mandates and I had questions about it, making sure that, are we doing what's best for our kids? Do we know that we're doing what's best for our kids? I had questions. I wasn't okay with just going, towing the line kind of thing. And it wasn't so much that, it was more the whole process that came with that. So it was going to, the teachers and the teachers saying we go to the principal and the principal saying that I'm supposed to go to the school board, and then the school board telling me I'm supposed to go to the ministry, and then the ministry saying, nope, you're supposed to go back to the school board, and then going back to the principal and being like, listen, I'm just getting tossed around and nothing's being done. I'm not getting any answers. A lot of people saying their hands are tied. I'm like, what are you here for? If you're not here to serve the public, what are you here for? And so it was really eye-opening. I'd been very vocal in never telling people what to do, but just, trying my best to have people realize that, hey, have you thought about this for yourself? Like, have you seen all the information? And whatever you decide is fine, but as long as it's informed consent, which is not what we're getting with the school system, which is not what we're getting with our healthcare system. And so then because of my boldness and I hope, and I've heard because of my integrity in how I go about it, I had some people approach me about the school board and saying you should run for trustee. So here in the Waterloo region, I ran for Waterloo-Wilmot in the past elections. And then that just snowballed from there. The support we gained, the conversations and connections that were made, obviously for that purpose, and knowing that there is so much work to be done here. So that's kind of my background in terms of how I got started with it.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And now that you've started kind of pushing back, I guess, have you found that you've made any headway? Because the event that you and I actually met at last month, there was a lot of talk there about, people are certainly trying to make some noise, but there's a lot of resistance that we're getting. I mean, we're finding out that the enemy has entrenched himself in the school system and doesn't appear to have a whole lot of motivation to do anything different.
Mhm.
So, what changes do you find that you've been able to make, if any, or are we at the point right now? And I think it's a legitimate question. Do we just have to detonate the whole system and start over?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I'm never one to tell people what to do. I'm happy to share my opinion, of course, and based on what I've experienced and what I see through my own two eyes. Um, but I mean, here in Waterloo Region, we have some pretty arrogant agents on the Waterloo Region District School Board. Um, we have some really powerful parents as well. We've got tremendous leadership and initiative and unity within the parents, and it's just been tremendous working with them, and all sorts of different reasons. That's another thing I want to mention, that it's, we're not all going to agree on everything, but we all agree that the current system for our kids is not okay, and we do not consent, and we say no to it. The headway that is being made, I think, is tremendous. Do I think that what we say when I go into delegate in front of the board, and I actually state this, now I state this, I said, I don't want to mislead anyone. I'm not here thinking that I'm going to change any minds or hearts of the agents of the Waterloo Region District School Board Corporation. I understand that I'm here to speak to the people, and I usually, point to the people that are here watching, or I look at the screen that I know is the camera that's videotaping, because I know that my words aren't reaching these people. They are so arrogant in their
Yeah.
presentation that I don't welcome it. I don't condone it. I don't wish for it. But at the same time, I'm quite grateful that they're not pretending, because it is the contrast is so stark that it adds for clarity, to be quite honest. Like, it opens up more eyes. There's no denying it. I mean, the people who want this system, I mean, they have no problem with it, and that's fine. But those who aren't seeing it, who haven't been seeing it, as long as they watch the school board meetings, then their eyes will be open, and I'm grateful for that, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the headway is tremendous. I think and we've got 3 trustees on the board right now that are very supportive and pro-parent, pro-student. They're there to speak for the parents, and obviously the parents are there to speak for their children, who are the students of the Waterloo Region District School Board. And so and this is not just the Waterloo Region District School Board. This is across of Ontario, right? And so, I mean, they know that things could be pushed further and faster if we're not standing up. And then the other piece of that is whether or not the changes are made directly in the board, people are seeing it because we're standing up. If we didn't say anything, if we just, went along with it, then people wouldn't notice it. To answer your question about whether or not, Ontario Ed is dead, I kind of believe it is. The more reading I do, the more I see, the more people start realizing just how non-democratic our society really is, how it's set up. I think that this is kind of just a distraction. It's a distraction for that, as you stated earlier, that evil to come through and to dominate. And I think that the school system as it is has been operating exactly the way it was intended. And it's just very in our face to some of us now that have our eyes open. They don't change because they believe they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be there for. And therefore it will be up to us as parents, as families, as society to say yes or no. Do you want this for our kids, for our families, for our future? If not, you need to remember that we're paying with our tax dollars. And the way that it's going now, for many of us, it's theft. So they've got to be held to account.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if that's something feasible. I mean, if you look at what happened in the last Ontario election, here we had a government that broke just about every promise that it made from the get-go, and yet was re-elected with a bigger majority. And I mean, you want to trace this all the way back to what's the origin of this? Well, it's judgment. It's judgment on a society that's turned its back from God. And so God gives us the government we deserve. But from a practical point of view, there aren't really a lot of options as far as changing what's going on in the government. Like I said, they've entrenched themselves. They have solidified all the levers of power. I mean, you look at what goes on in the judicial system, for instance, and that, all of the liberal or conservative and name only appointed judges who are there to further the agenda. When you control the judiciary and law enforcement, there's not really a whole lot you can do. So our option that we look at, and this is why we started School Pods Canada, was that we have to withdraw consent by withdrawing from the system and creating a new system. And we have to do that, at the Great Canadian Awakening Conference that we were at in May. One of the speakers was the frontline nurses, and they're kind of doing the same thing where we're creating an alternative medical system outside of the sick care community that exists out there now. So from the perspective of education, and even though this isn't your field of expertise, as you said, you were in health field, and yet you seem to have been pulled into the education system
solutions.
So what are we able to do in regards to creating an alternative education system? I think this lends to what we're doing next Monday.
Yeah. I don't disagree with anything you stated. I don't believe that government's going to be the what pulls us out of this. So, but do I think that it all has a place? Like, if we can turn around the people in government, like I said, the system's created the way the system's created, not to serve the people right now. So the only way that's going to change is if we have people who actually want to serve the people in place to change the policy and the procedure of how things are run, so that it actually does work for the people, and so that the democratic process is actually democratic. All of that stuff would have to change within the system. Do I think that, do I think the most powerful way in the education sector would be to pull kids out, because that's where the funding is coming from, right? Because money talks. You take a kid out, they lose thousands of dollars each year for each student.
I think it's 13,000 or something.
It's
like that.
Yeah, it's 13 to 14,000 or something. Yeah. And so do I believe that would be incredibly powerful? Absolutely. Do I believe that that's everyone's, and we'll talk about this on the 8th. Do I believe that that's everyone's mission? No, I think that everyone plays a role in this. And what I really want people to do is really think about what it is their role is. Like, is it to pull your kid out? If so, don't let fear get in the way. Let's figure out how to do that for you. If it's truly to stay in the system, let's help you navigate through it. Let's help you understand what your rights are, what your obligations are, what your responsibilities are as a parent, as a citizen, what information is available to you that you have every right to obtain, And how do you access information like the books that are in your schools? So really equipping people with those resources, that knowledge, that sense of empowerment, because we've all been demoralized for the last year, like how many years, like slowly demoralized, probably for our whole lifetime, and
Well,
just
it's learned
rapid.
helplessness.
Sorry.
It's learned helplessness.
Oh, yeah, and absolutely dumbing down, right?
Yep.
So that it's all by design, so that we are dependent on something else that's more powerful, that will help us. And so when people realize that they don't need that, then I mean, there's no stop. I don't think there's any stopping us. So I mean, I don't think there's a one answer. I think we all have a role. I think that, I mean, if the school systems crumbled entirely, do I think that we would be able to come up with a system that's even better, or that's better? I'm not even say even. That's absolutely so much better. Yes, I do. I think we've got the strength and the know-how to do that all ourselves if we wish to do that. Is it necessary, or is that what God's plan is? I have no idea. I never have any expectation. It doesn't need to look any certain way. All I know for me is I am on a mission to make sure that my kids, and as many kids as possible, can access high quality education without the indoctrination, and are able to thrive and live full, purposeful lives with joy. And no one dictating what success is versus what it isn't for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's, as you said, we've come to trust that the system's serving us. And we're encountering a lot of parents who either are afraid to make decisions, or don't feel that they're qualified to make decisions, or don't have the information. So we appreciate people like yourself and we have done as much as possible here in the Niagara region, having information sessions so that parents will know what their options are. A lot of people, even sometimes when it comes to homeschooling, they're asking, is it legal? Even basic things like that. And we know it is all throughout Canada, right? It's just because we haven't, as parents, had to make those decisions. All of a sudden, we need all that information that you're talking about. Because that's the beauty of it. There's so much available, and it's not one model fits all. And we actually want to try to steer away from that, from the system right now. Yes, people need to understand that there are options, what they are, what are the pros and the cons of each. And so tell us now, for this January 8 event that's going to be in Waterloo, what kind of experts and kind of options and things, a little sample would be available there for parents, for families?
Yeah, absolutely. So the doors are going to open at 5:30. It'll give people about an hour to mingle through, connect with one another, connect with the info booths. So we've got some vendors coming in from all across the region that have already opened their doors and allowed or provided a space, an alternative space, and I don't even like to say alternative. I mean, a space for children to learn and flourish outside of the publicly funded school systems. And so they'll be available to have conversations with families and parents coming through. We've got people from the community who've been working really hard for our kids, informing parents about the things that are happening within our school systems right now, that have been happening abroad, the sexualization happening within the schools and within the system. We've got, a table set up for the publicly funded school systems to help navigate through that, how to become a delegate, how to advocate within the system, if that's where your role is. And then speakers start at 6:30. And so then we have Dr. David Haskell speaking on education versus indoctrination, and just understanding, because those are kind of buzzwords now, a little bit of stigma to those words, and to just really understand what we mean by that and what is meant by that, and kind of having a feel for what children really do need to succeed versus what they don't, and maybe we thought they needed. Um, and then we'll go into, we'll have a little bit of engagement with the crowd and asking what people kind of want for a school system for their kids. And then go into the speaker panel, which will be more of the solutions or the options for people. So either they're staying in or they're getting out. And so again, staying in, there will be some navigation through the system, and what that looks like and what people have the power to do, and hopefully empower people to do that, and stay connected and get support, how to do that. And then if you're looking to get out, the options there. So whether it's homeschooling co-ops, whether it's pods, so joining a pod, starting a pod, which is where the two of you come in. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. Forest schools or alternative schools. We've got a teacher there that's been part of the, publicly funded school systems and then moved out of that system and started up schools as well. And then we've got CCEM, which I just recently discovered, which has been a blessing. So they're, set up to help churches create schools within the churches, because the space is there and it makes sense. So then they'll speak on that. And then there'll be a question answer and then some more time to mingle and go through the booths again.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. That is good. I think people do need to know what is available. The fact that we don't have to go through one system. I personally was a public school teacher, left about 12, 13 years ago now. And it wasn't until I actually came out of the public school system and started homeschooling our son that I realized that there's just so many ways to go about educating your child and the choices you can make. And I even felt like I was restricted really in the public school system because I wanted to know that there's those choices. And, I wish, at the time when the public school system was actually functioning, that there were actually schools that, and had the different philosophies rather than the cookie cutter thing that ended up happening, which is now not really working well. And so I think it's really worthwhile to explore the alternatives. And so you've been talking to parents. I want to kind of hear a little bit about that. What are parents thinking and feeling and encountering, and what are they sharing with you? What seems to be common?
Well, I mean, they're sharing so much with us. I mean, I think that, again, that there's that demoralization and almost the sense of like, what's the point? But then there's also the distrust, and then not knowing who you can talk to, if you're safe to talk to them, what the repercussions are to speak your mind, which is all part of the problem as well. So you kind of get what you give. And so when people hear me talking about gender ideology and the problems within there, then I'll have a whole bunch of people reaching out about their, things that have happened within the school system with their kids, or their concerns that they were too afraid to mention and they're not sure who to go to with it. They can't go to the teachers, they can't go to the principal because they don't want to be known. That's a big thing. Teachers come to us as well. They're not agreeing with what's going on. They see it as a problem, but yet they don't want to be ostracized. They don't want to be canceled. I'm sure you know of Carolyn Burjowski over here in the Waterloo Region District School Board.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just one thing after another. Our own tax dollars going towards legal action towards these teachers that we support as a people. We say we support you, Carolyn. We are grateful for you for standing up and saying, sharing your concerns with these particular books and this particular ideology. And it should be questioned. There should be discussion and debate. And yet we are paying with our money legal action against her. It makes absolutely no sense. And so there's quite a bit of stories, everything from kindergarten kids being asked, are you a boy or a girl? to washrooms being, girls going into their washroom and not feeling safe. It's there's just an abundance of stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely we've heard our fair share. And, the gender ideology obviously is a prominent issue in the school system. But I'm speaking to more parents who are finding that children with special needs or children who need to be taught differently than what the system has,
Yes.
they're just not taken care of. I know not long ago there was a renewed agreement between support staff and the public school boards and the Ministry of Education, I believe. Anyway, and it seems though there was some kind of terms agreed upon, there's still not sufficient support staff. There's no sufficient support for students and class sizes and so forth. And so I know that the issues are of different kind out there. And parents just don't know how to navigate. And I believe that events like the one you're bringing together, I think it's time for parents to start talking to one another, to start connecting with the teachers. Just like you said, not every teacher also is on board and is comfortable with what's happening. But for them, sometimes come to the choice: do I keep my job or do I go along with it? So
yeah, and that's where a lot of people are finding themselves in every field now, is that in order for you to remain in the system, you have to comply. And people are now having to start making tough choices. I was just reading about this doctor who was written up and then eventually terminated because she wouldn't agree with and participate in gender reassignment surgeries and using preferred pronouns. I mean, when you really think about it, it's completely insane. Like there's no sense left in this.
Yeah.
And what it is a portend of things to come. It is it's helping us to understand what it's going to be like ultimately under the mark of the beast system, where you don't get to participate in society at all unless you take the mark. So we're being conditioned to accept that, but we're also being conditioned to fight against that now.
Yeah, you're saying, like, people's eyes are opening and starting to realize that there is an issue here, and we no longer go along with it.
And I think for far too long, North American society has been, okay, sera, sera. And freedom has never been free. It's always had to be fought for. And then once it's been achieved, it has to be defended. And the moment you stop defending it, there's always candidates that are out there who are more than willing to take it away from you.
That's right.
And this is what we're finding with the World Economic Forum now. This is what we're finding, with Davos and all of these groups, United Nations and everything else. It's all about bringing the world under a Luciferian, anti-God, anti-Christ system that
anti-family,
and anti-family, anti-Christian, anti-religion, except
anti-human.
Well,
really.
anti-human, yeah. And the ultimate objective is, of course, you go back to the Georgia Guidestones, and it's elimination of 90% of the world population. And until people really, and I say this over and over again, but until people really get their heads around that, they don't know what they're fighting. What's the green agenda? What's this whole sexual, transgender and the gay agenda? And what is this whole, whatever category you want to talk about, we're being hit. You've got terrorism, you've got Marxism, you've got all of this stuff that's hitting us. And you got to stand back and say, well, where's this all coming from? It's all coming from the same place. So the question is then how do we mobilize? And this was the question that I asked at the event.
Yeah, because we need unity. Like, we need people to come together, right? Rather than work as individuals.
You'll get people watching TikTok videos about fails of the week and stuff like that. They'll get millions of views, but when you've got actually valid information, nobody wants to see it. So what is it that we can do, in your estimation, to kind of not only just wake people up, but get them to start taking a stand?
I think we're kind of sifting through. I almost picture like us going through mud or jello, like through that demoralization bit, right? Because
Yeah.
that's all been by design. You know, the
Yes.
exhaustion everyone feels, the
Uh-huh.
system that's created is so that people can be working the 9 to 5 and then being so exhausted that they just want to put their kids in front of a screen so that they can get ready for the next day and just look forward to the weekend. And then the weekend is cleaning the house and getting those things done for the next week. Like, people are exhausted. They're not living their lives.
She must have come to our place and watched this when we weren't aware of it.
Everybody goes through that.
But I mean, like, God doesn't want that for us. He states like
No.
that's why he sent Jesus, right? Was so that we do not live in slavery. We're not meant to be slaves. And that's how, I mean, now it's so taboo to say that now, right? With DEI. But that's essentially how we've been operating. We're operating like slaves. And unless we say
Mhm.
no by actually taking action, not just no, like complaining and not doing anything about it. Um, I mean, we're just going to keep on being slaves. And like Darryl, like you said, I mean, there'll be less and less freedoms until it's like you can't even say anything anymore, which I mean, we're close to that, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's the last freedom to go. You can't say what you actually consciously think. Um, what else do you have?
Yeah. The first amendment in the United States is the right to free speech is really the last bastion of the your ability to live your life as an independent agent. And I don't know if you heard or not, but Ezra Levant from Rebel News wrote a book in the last election called The Libranos.
Hmm.
So it's about the liberals being like the Sopranos, the mafia. And he just got charged and convicted. And I can't remember what the crime was, but he basically has to pay the government a
Defamation or
fine,
something?
and he's not allowed to publish any more books unless he has the government's permission to do so. To
Wow.
which point he turned around and said, "I'm writing another book."
That's it, right? That's exactly it. That's what we need. We need more light. We need more light. We can't let, and it's the fear. People really
Yeah.
play into Satan's
Oh,
fear,
sure.
right? Accusations, and then and then people back off, like, oh, I don't want to be accused of so and so. It's like, we need to step into our power. We need to know the truth and do the best we can and know that God's got us. Like, if we do that, God's got us, right? Like, we've got each other. And I have full trust in his plan. I have no idea what it's going to look like, but I'm excited to find out because I know he's already won. And
Mhm.
I mean, that's all that we can keep on doing. I think the more and more people start to realize that whatever they fear could be on the other side, when they trust that it will be so much better, whatever it is, that it is so much better on the other side of the fear, of the doubt, then
Yeah.
I mean, there's no stopping us, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I believe that public events, like the one that's coming up on January 8 in Waterloo region, is the key, because I have spoken to even young people, students that I work with. They say, I feel like I'm the only one that has this opinion in my school or amongst my
Yeah.
friends or in my
I
neighborhood,
still hear
and
that.
parents. Pardon?
I still hear that too. And so that's interesting because I had this pull to do, this open house info night kind of thing. And it came from just feeling like, oh, so many people already know what's going on now. So many people know what's going on. And now next step is solutions, right? Like, they're aware of
Yeah.
the problem. And if we don't figure out how to empower people and find out what the solutions are, then it just demoralizes people even more, and it paralyzes people even more. Like, they don't want to know
Yeah.
information that instills fear or stress that they can't do something about, right? And but then we realized, wait, there's a new audience, and there's people who don't fully know what's going on in the school boards. And so we really do need that piece of, and we don't want a lot of the attention or intention to go towards highlighting all the problems.
Yeah.
It's not about that, but just the awareness again and shedding light on the truth, and then hey, we can deal with it, right? Like it's not about fear mongering. It's not about fearing people into action. It's about skilling people up and informing people, and then letting them make the decision themselves once they're informed. Yeah.
Well, once society in general withdraws consent, then the oppressors have no more power.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that we have been so conditioned, like you said, this systematic demoralization and the learned helplessness, and you really don't have a voice. I mean, it is so apparent that when you look at Justin Trudeau and how he deals with society and Canadian public, he doesn't care.
Well,
and there's no
doesn't listen. Yeah.
Well, and there's no fear of consequences because he knows he's got backing of some very powerful people. And so therefore, but at some point in time, and if you look at what happened just today, for instance, with the resignation of Claudine Gay at Harvard University, I mean, that was probably the most unqualified woman to ever lead a university in the history of universities. And, you know,
no
she
apology.
had, what was that?
And no apology, just like she was, you know, a victim of racism.
Yeah, another thing was all racism, but the backlash was so intense that even she wasn't able to withstand it, even though the faculty kind of came around her and everything else. And so once the people rise up and they realize that they've got the power, and this is what happened in Italy during World War II with Mussolini, it happened with Nicolae Ceausescu in Romania back in 1990, whenever it was that they ended his reign unceremoniously. And, you know, when people start banding together, but the trick is, and this is why we are so grateful for what you're doing here with this event and with Fred Weening on the Great Canadian Awakening, and the next conference is going to be the Great Canadian Education Awakening, that we need to rally the troops to get them to understand that if God be for us, who can be against us? But we got to go to him and we got to say, okay, what are our marching orders?
That's right.
A lot of people, actually, Fred has expressed it's time to stop protesting.
Yes.
I mean, we always can voice our opinions, but it's time to start coming up with plans. Like you said, this alternative education or medical system is not going to create itself. It is going to take an effort to come together, and we have to come together, and we have to really learn how to overcome the minor differences that we have to focus on what do we want to achieve, which is the freedom to be able to choose, to be able to impact how our society is being run rather than watching it run certain way.
And having deviants make decisions about our families and, you know, how society is going to go, and have perversion and everything else being normalized, which is, it's very intentional. There's no accident in what's going on right here.
Yeah.
And, you know, people are just kind of sitting there and they're almost dumbstruck by, how did this happen? Well, they told us what they were going to do. You know, I've preached about it a couple of times in my messages on Saturdays, that in 1963, the communist takeover of the United States, the 45-point plan for the communist takeover of the United States was read in U.S. Congress. That was 61 years ago. And they told exactly what they were going to do. And one of the things was to make beauty abhorrent and to glorify ugliness and to normalize it.
So now I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, we have to have, as people of Canada, we have to have points by which we want to govern our society and strive for those, because just gathering information is not sufficient, and we have to have a plan, you know, and have steps. And so what are you seeing as, you know, what are you seeing? Like, how are we moving forward?
Yeah. I mean, I'm no expert. Just basically, again, in my opinion, And you're right, Darryl, it's like hidden right in plain sight. It's so arrogantly bold in our face
Yeah.
that I think some people wouldn't even believe it to be true. And
Yeah.
so in terms of, I absolutely agree. I actually grieved that a little bit, Melina, about the whole, like, it's time to stop protesting, all that stuff. At the last March, I don't know what was coming over me just before I went to speak. I was like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm like really down. Like I feel like I'm grieving something. And it was like I was grieving that stage. Like I was grieving, you know, and I'm like, oh, what's the answer? What's the answer? And I actually was at the same stage in thought in terms of, okay, we're done with the protests. Now let's move on. But honestly, I think there's a place for it. Do I think that protesting is going to make changes directly? No. Do I think protests allow for unity and excitement and momentum and empowerment and even just people? So many people with protests is the, I didn't know I wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
For so long, they thought they were the only one, right? And so everyone's going to be coming at a different stage. And so I think the people who have the pull to protest should organize protests. And I think
Yeah.
the people who have the pull to work on that alternative system should work on the alternative system. But it's always reaching into, what is it that you want me to do, God? Like, just
Yeah.
like Darryl, what you were saying, right? Like, look to what is your plan. I release all expectation of my wants and my will. I mean, I would think anyone who knows the work I've been doing in the board probably would bet that I would love to see the school board crumble to their knees for everything that they've done personally to me, and you know, to the parents, to the kids, all of that. That's not what I want. Like I don't want like anything in particular. Like it doesn't need to look any certain way. I just want things to be well and good
Yeah.
for our kids and our society. It doesn't need to look any certain way other than that. And so the how, I have no idea. But I do think that we all have our own strengths. We all have our own pull, and like proficiencies and passions. And I think that's for a reason. And we should be digging deep into that. But the other piece too, again, going back to the system, that I think that people need to start waking up to is the system, again, is made to serve those who are in power of the people, not the people. So, and what I mean by that, and so when we talk about like, you were not giving consent anymore, and like when you withdraw consent, for so long, I always looked at it in terms of, and this was just very recent for me, it was that, you know, I looked at it as, okay, well, we've got some people who are very loud about saying no, like, which I would say you and I, you know, that's us. We're saying no very loudly. We're very bold. We're bold and we're open and honest about it. And then there's people who are bold and open and honest about agreeing with the system and wanting it to persist. And then we've got all these other people, which are the majority of people, right? And all this time, we kind of looked at it as, there's the people saying no and the people saying yes, and then a whole bunch of people, and either group might say, and I think most of them, or the majority, are saying no, and I think the majority are saying yes. However it is.
Yeah.
But I think the majority of the people who aren't saying yes or no, they don't realize that their vote based on this system as it is a yes. So so their vote by staying silent is a yes by acquiescence. And that's something that I just recently realized, that, oh, so it doesn't matter. The system, when I say they, you know, those in charge, they know the system, and they know that it would take a lot of people to stand up and say, no, 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 before we get enough people to override all of the people that aren't doing anything at all or saying nothing at all.
And
Right.
that's the tendency of people to do. And I remember the band Rush had a song called Free Will, and one of the lines in it was, "If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice."
Right.
I mean, that's very profound.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I
And
think
that
so many people, what the point there is, and I hope that I've driven it home, is that so many people believe that, let's say, they're not speaking up, but they don't agree with what's going on. So in their minds, they might feel like, well, I'm not agreeing. I'm not voting yes. So yes, I'm not doing anything about it, but I haven't said yes. So my vote just doesn't count. And unfortunately, I hate to be the bearer of bad news,
yeah.
but you're saying yes. It has
Yes.
it's been counted, it's voted for. Um, and so we won't come through this without enough people saying no openly.
Well, and if you look back at on every November 11th, on Remembrance Day, Memorial Day in the United States, that we commemorate those who paid the ultimate price for freedom, and that we laud them, and yet we're not willing to do the same thing. We're not willing to pay the price. And if you look at the Bible, you're saying that on the other side of this, it's going to be great, it's going to be wonderful, and everything else. The problem is that there's never a miracle in the Bible until it's needed. People want God to show up and do the deliverance while they're sitting on the couch. But you have to be willing to stand up to the most powerful man in the world and say, we're not going to bow to your stupid idol, even if God doesn't defend us, and be willing to get thrown into the fiery furnace.
So God shows up in the action, in the battle. God doesn't show up if you're not doing anything. And that's
I mean, if you look at Winston
Yeah.
Churchill
yeah.
and the kind of leadership that he exhibited, I mean, some of the speeches, one of his most amazing talents and skills was his oratory abilities. As a matter of fact, he turned out to be a terrible peacetime prime minister and quickly got the boot after that. But during the war, he was the man for the hour, because he said, blood, sweat, toil, and tears, we're going to do this. And this is the kind of the position in history that we're in right now, that if we don't stand up, and if we don't push back with a loud, I always love that scene from Lord of the Rings with Gandalf saying that you will not pass. And that's kind of where we have to be. The big demon guy looking kind of like a lot of people in government right now. And
you got to take action.
We got to sit there and say, you're not going any further.
Yeah.
And when they make a dumb decision, that's not in our best interest, because they're trying to satisfy their perversion. And let's be honest, what's going on in the school system caters to perverts. It is a fetish that they want.
Well, and the thing is, the sex ed was written by someone who was convicted pedophile.
Convicted pedophile.
And I, as an educator, was surprised that this was never pulled out and said, hey, the person who is involved is a criminal now. Like, we should just totally assign somebody else to do this. And it wasn't done.
If everybody all of a sudden stood up when a politician said something stupid and said stupid, I mean, that would stop everything in its tracks right then and there. But we want to be polite, and we're such good Canadians.
Well, and I want to speak to that because I work with young people, with students, and we want to make sure that we don't also create a rebellious generation. You know what I mean? Just rebel for the sake of rebellion. So all of this action has to come with teaching critical thinking, problem solving, looking at facts, logic and things like all these skills that are not there.
Honor, integrity. Right? I mean, that's the other piece of it, is that you can stand up with honor and integrity. You can have a conversation with the other side that does not agree with you with honor and integrity. Those are things that need to be instilled in this. Absolutely. But those boundaries and that intuition can't keep being dumbed down. Right?
Yeah. And the other thing is, I also find, working with groups of young people as well, is the fact that, the whole idea that if we disagree with one another, we either hate one another or, we're mean or something like that, there's labels flying around. it is, the beauty of Canadian and American society is that we come from different cultures, we come from different backgrounds, and somehow we harmonize. Well, in the past, we have been able to harmonize it, make it work together. And all of a sudden, we have heard recordings of teachers say to kids like of Muslim families who've pulled the kids for June 1st for Pride Month, and say, oh, your parents are wrong, they should change. What happened to the diversity and the beauty of our society, and being able to problem solve despite the fact that we have different religious beliefs, different cultural background, different political convictions, and so I tell young people, just because your friend believes something or does something doesn't mean you have to believe and do it, but you still have to respect the person.
But the adults aren't doing that. I mean, just yesterday, I was on a Telegram channel for several months from a Christian guy, and I disagreed with him on something, and I vociferously disagreed with him on this particular issue because, well, he was wrong. And then I checked back a couple of hours later, and all of a sudden, I was no longer on the channel.
It's the co-cancel thing you're talking about.
So, but if Christians are doing that to one another because we disagree on certain issues, how much more the rest of the world? So we got about 5 minutes left. I want to ask you, what is it you're hoping to get out of this event on January 8th, and what is the next step after that?
Mm-hmm. So quite a bit, but I mean, when it comes down to it, I want everyone who's come through the doors to leave empowered. And I want them, when they come in, I want them to feel that we are meeting them where they are, and encouraging them to act in a way that aligns with them, and that they realize that they all have a purpose and a role in this. And that as long as they're going by the pull that they have to work on, I don't think they're going to be steered in the wrong direction. And I think it's all going to work towards good. And the next steps to that would be, we really want to suss out, the audience and the community and get a lot of feedback in terms of what people are wanting. I know for me, I had no idea how excited I would be in terms of like homeschooling, the possibility of possibly homeschooling my kids. Like, I didn't think that was something. This is the other thing. I want people to understand, like, the facts too, like hearing from teachers that, you probably need 2 hours to do what we do in 6 hours, 6-hour day. You probably don't even need 2 hours. These are things that once you know them, you feel a lot closer to making something possible. And so if homeschooling is what people want, then we'll do another event. Now we've got the event happening. I think it's March, right? The
Great Canadian Education Awakening.
Yeah. Is that the one that Fred's doing? And is it happening in March or April?
It's as far as I know, it's happening in the end of March.
There's still no dates set.
There's no dates, but we know that like things are just happening so organically, right? That there's the next step. So we don't want to recreate anything, and whatever is already being done, we're just going to send people there. And then anything that we can serve, then that's what we're going to do. So if there's a homeschooling conference, I think, coming up as well. So there's maybe no sense in doing that. If we want to do a greater, people want to know more about pods, we can get deeper into the Pods Canada stuff. If people want to know more about starting schools in their churches, we've got people ready to, do town halls and info sessions about that. So really just keep on trekking and doing what we need to do for our kids. Continue the advocacy happening within the school boards, as if we still have the pull to do that, whoever has the pull to do that, to keep on doing that and supporting those to be empowered to take action.
Right.
Yeah. So you're saying for everybody to find what their calling is and to pursue that, and just to find others who have similar callings so that we can be effective and empowered, for sure. I think that's a great idea.
Well, we're grateful for the work that you're doing and the excitement and just the enthusiasm you bring to this. it's we all have to pull together, because I think a lot of people have just recently woken up, and especially over the past 4 years after what's happened, it's kind of like, well, what did happen? and now we've got to start getting together and taking back society from those who have taken away from us. So
so where can people find information about your event?
Yeah, we don't have a website other than the Substack. We're kind of using the Substack as a place for information and being up to date with the happenings. So it's Empower without the ER. So it's Empower Educating Minds, Parents of Waterloo Region. So Empower connect.substack.com, I believe it is.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Well, if anything, then people can also email us at info@schoolpodscanada.com, and we'll forward you sent us a flyer, and so we'll invite everyone. And we just need more people like you to organize the public. And so thank you for all that.
Thank you.
Pray for this event, and hang on.
Yes,
just
pray for people to come through the door. Pray. Yeah. We've got the space. So it's got to be one of those, if you build it, they will come kind of.
Yeah, we understand. Well, Chris, it's been great chatting with you tonight. We're excited about being part of this, and we'll look forward to getting together next Monday. And thank you, everybody else, for joining us tonight. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week right here on Land Network for the Smarten Up program from School Pods Canada. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.